Good afternoon and welcome to the latest Humpday Hangout. I'm Steve Pegram, one of your hosts for the first Wednesday of the month Humpday Hangout, brought to you by ISFSI, the Instructor Society, as well as Penwell Fire Engineering. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming fall ISFSI Instructor Conference, and we've got a couple of guests on here to talk to you about what they'll be teaching at that conference, as well as some of the things they do in their home state and home departments. But before we get into that, we'll do our normal chat about upcoming events. One of the big events that we always talk about is FDIC. And again, FDIC will be in April 2017. And the instructors have just been chosen for that. Over 900 submissions were given to the advisory board to review. And they had to whittle that down to less than 200 instructors. So lots of people got told no, including me for one of my proposals. But a lot of people got told yes, and we would encourage everyone to stay involved and continue to put in for classes at FDIC. It's a great experience to be an instructor there, and I think everybody would agree with that. And if Bobby Halton comes in and joins us later today, we may hit on that a little bit more. But we are going to talk about the ISFSI Fall Conference. Little background or history. Back in the day, ISFSI is who ran FDIC. And it was sold to Penwell Fire Engineering more than a decade ago. But the Fall Conference was kind of a different, smaller venue that traveled around the country and was sort of the prep school for FDIC. So if you were a new instructor or an up-and-comer, a lot of times they would give you the opportunity to teach at the Fall Conference, and that would be your stepping stone to FDIC, or the big stage, as we called it. It's changed a little bit. The Instructor Society has decided we want to focus that fall conference more on specific to instructors, instructor development, and what we can do to build better instructors and give instructors more resources that they need to do their job. So that's kind of the focus of the Fall Instructors Conference, and ISFSI does one every year in the fall, and this year it's in Cincinnati, Ohio. So we'll be in Cincinnati for part of the time. We'll be over across the river in Boone County, Kentucky for some of the time as well. And the information about that conference, you could still register if you're interested. Go to isfsi.org and click on the Fall Conference, and you can get that information. It's the week of September 27th to October 1st, so it's coming up real soon. The host hotel's sold out, but there's other hotels available. And basically, 3 days of pre-conference workshops and then a 2-day conference, Friday and Saturday. On Tuesday, we're hosting the ISFSI Training Officer Credential. It's a new program by ISFSI built around the Training Officer Desk Reference Book. Great program for new training officers or existing training officers to help you develop professional development and a credential, actually, that you can hold, certifying the work that you've done, and you do a portfolio and submit homework online. That class is actually sold out. So there's no opportunity for that class at the Fall Conference. But there is opportunities of other classes around the country, and that information's on the website, as well as if your department or your academy might want to host that class, you can contact us at ISFSI and host the Training Officer Credential Program. On Wednesday, we'll be doing the Principles of Modern Fire Attack Program. We're out with version 3, which is the post-grant. It's been completely renewed, completely updated with new graphics, new videos, new information. We had meetings with UL a few months ago, and our entire instructor cadre spent a few days in Baltimore updating that program. There's still space available in that class, which is on Wednesday, September 28th at the Syndicate in Newport, Kentucky. So if you're coming in for the conference, you can take that class, or if you just want to come and attend that one-day class, that's available too. Then Thursday is the Principles of Modern Fire Attack Hot Training, or hands-on training. This is being done at the Boone County Fire Academy, and I'll let Brad talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But basically, we looked at the Principle of Modern Fire Attack program and all the things we're talking about with fire dynamics and how do we teach that as an instructor. So it's a hands-on class. It's got live fire, and we put instructors and students through a bunch of scenarios and not only show them scenarios and things to teach, but also how to teach those scenarios when they go back to their academy. So it's a great class. Hugely successful at our fall conference in Tennessee last summer, and we'll be doing it again at Firehouse in Nashville and FDIC 2017. So, Brad, I'll let you talk about that in just a second. And then our actual conference is Friday and Saturday, more of your classroom type setting at the hotel in Cincinnati. And we have a whole bunch of instructors that'll be there with us, keynote speakers each day. Vina Drennan will be speaking one day. John Tippett will be a keynote another day, and a host of instructors, two of which are here with us today, OJ and Dave, and they'll be talking to us in a minute. But before I turn it over to Brad and our guests talking about their programs at FDI or at the Fall Conference, Brad, could you talk to us a little bit about the Principles of Modern Fire Attack HOT training, specifically the HOT program?
Yeah, absolutely, Chief. Brad French, Lieutenant with the Dayton Fire Department and on the Board of Directors for the ISFSI. I have the great privilege, along with a bunch of other fantastic instructors, to help teach the hands-on training program that's going to be down, as Chief Pegram mentioned, across the river at the Boone County Fire Training Center. We've had a lot of success across the country with the Principles of Modern Fire Attack classroom program. It's a great 8-hour education on, everything, modern terminology and looking at UL and NIST studies and all that kind of stuff, and applying some case study scenarios and then looking at different options for water application, for search, for understanding fire behavior, and it's been really successful. And the hands-on training is kind of the natural extension to that. It's kind of moving forward to the drill ground a lot of those principles. So we've had some good success with it in the past, and we're going to be doing vent, enter, isolate, search hands-on in live heat and smoke, as opposed to just practicing VEIS as a skill, with in some candy smoke or with your Nomex backwards or something like that, doing it in live heat and live smoke. The VEIS technique, as well as getting into some advanced dollhouse burns, the fire behavior boxes, different styles, different types, some teaching techniques with this. And of course, it's an instructor conference, right? So the idea is to take a lot of the material and deliver it in such a way that it makes it palatable to take back to their. Be doing a lot with thermal imaging cameras, doing a lot with hose streams, talking about interior water, exterior water, the right way and the wrong way, air entrainment in streams, and a lot of folks get worked up about water streams and interior versus exterior and things like that, and both are absolutely appropriate at different times, and both have to be done the right way. And that's one of the big things that we cover in that hands-on training, is not only some hose line movement and stream placement issues, but pretty much everything in between as it relates to modern fire dynamics stuff. So it's going to be a great program. We've got Brian Kazmierzak that's going to be one of the instructors. We've got a lot of different instructors from all across the country. Scott Knoll, Seth Barker, myself, I'm going to have the opportunity to participate as well. So the hands-on training on that Thursday is going to be a great session, and we've still got some slots available in the program. And as Chief Pegram said, go to isfsi.org and check the links to all that stuff and get registered. We've still got a few spots for HOT.
All right, bye.
Always forget to unmute. I also forgot to mention that if you're watching us live and you'd like to ask the group a question specific to what we're talking about today, feel free to do so on Twitter at #FETalk, and we'll try to answer those questions as we go through the show. But Twitter, #FETalk for Fire Engineering Talk, FETalk, and we'll try to get those questions as well. Brad, why don't you go ahead and introduce our two guests, both of whom are speaking at the Fall Conference and probably familiar to a lot of our people watching from home today.
All right, fantastic. I'll let the guys kind of get into the nitty-gritty of their introductions themselves, but if you're paying any attention around on the internet, you certainly have seen the names Dave Casey and OJ Kolodziej before, and have done some great contributions both with ISFSI and the Penwell Fire Engineering family. And so I'll kick it to these guys. What I'd like for them to do is just introduce themselves to the crowd that maybe is not that familiar, and also talk specifically about what your session is going to be at the Fall Conference. Both of these guys will be presenting either Friday or Saturday as part of the classroom sessions of Fall Conference. So talk a little bit about your session, what the layout, what you expect students to take home. Dave, let's start with you.
All righty, and I remember to unmute. Thank you to Steve. I'm Louisiana State Training Director, and I was Florida's before I retired. And just real briefly, I'm the co-author, with the Fire Engineering video series, The Right Seat. We have 4 videos out. 3 are leadership ones, tactical with Jim Silvernail, and all of them with Chris Niebling. And also, you mentioned Brian a minute ago. I'm the lead author on the Jones and Bartlett textbook, which is NFPA, IFC, ISFSI, Live Fire Training Principles and Practice. And we're getting ready to do the new edition, and Brian's joined our happy band of writers on that. So we'll be having him on board along with Susan Schell and Mike Kemp. And we're working on that right now, along with Dr. Smith does the physiology chapter, which is great in there. Coming up for the conference is and it's the first time I'm presenting this, so I'm kind of nervous more than the usual. Plus, normally you don't present to a whole room full of instructors. So this is based on some information. I'm the co-owner of Ascend Leadership, and that's a psychometrics company. We do promotional testing around the country. And one of the things that we saw was people not being prepared to do the new job or to do the testing. And that's where the right seat came from. And in doing that, it kind of the next step was, well, how are people learning these skills? Is it textbook learning? Are they watching videos? And since I have both, that would be a nice thing if that was true. College classes, things like that. So we wanted to look into where are people learning their leadership skills. And a contractor did a study for the U.S. Army on their up-and-coming officers, and the results of that survey were really surprising. And they weren't at all what they expected. They weren't at all what I would have thought. So we did a survey. It's been at FDIC for a couple of years now. It's been in the magazine. It's been on the Fire Engineering blog. We took it to the Lex Luger Conference in Nebraska. Our conference is here in Louisiana, and the International Fools Conference last year. And we asked people, where did they get their leadership learning? And the results were in Fire Engineering already, but we're going to discuss it in a little bit different vein at the Fall Conference, because we're going to take that information and now how do we apply it at our local training agency? How do we use that information to move ahead? And I know the results, to me, were very surprising. I ran a community college program for a while. I helped coordinate state training for many years and have been involved in training for about 30 years now. And the results of the survey were not at all what I expected. And when I presented them to the North American Fire Training Directors, I guess it's a year and a half ago, was the initial presentation of the initial findings. It was a little bit of controversy going on because a lot of folks had different opinions, which you would expect. And of course, the survey is a little skewed. There's no doubt about it, because if you look at where we're getting the information, it's the more motivated people that are going to be at those conferences. But it was really interesting. And what I want to do at our class is, of course, to get the discussion going with everybody and get some opinions in there and look at how do we take this information and improve our training programs. And that's the real key to it. One of the things that's in the article, and I discussed about a fire officer in South Florida, that he absolutely grilled me after my very first fire as a chief officer, and of course I went to multiple alarms, and it was a big fire, but he absolutely grilled me on apparatus placement, water flow, where we use large diameter lines, and just to a point that I even asked him, are you working for the insurance company or what's going on? Because I didn't really know him that well at the time. And he said, no, it's because I want to learn from this, because I might have it next shift. And he is well known, and I didn't ask him for this, so I won't mention his name, but I'll get it before the class so we can pick on him a little bit. But he is one of these guys that's just known for being able to pull up to an incident that you know he's never had, and it all comes together. And he just makes the right calls. He says, do this, how's these things go? And he's managed to take the science of learning from other people, that experiential learning, or that informal learning, rather, to kind of a science. And that's what we want to really talk about in the class, is how you can strengthen your internal training programs in your agencies or for the departments that you provide the training for, and also for individuals that are in the class, how they can pick up a lot of skills in non-traditional manners that really may serve them better than a traditional textbook, which is why it's called Beyond the Textbook. And that is the entire presentation in a nutshell.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dave. That is it really sounds like interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to your class, absolutely. And it's, you know, that's the beauty of it being an instructor conference. Certainly there are exceptions to this rule, but in general you find the folks in the fire service that are really the most engaged and really the most into the job, if you will, oftentimes end up in instructor roles, right? It just kind of comes natural to them by having that enthusiasm and passion about the job. And so that's going to be the great thing about this conference is it's going to be a bunch of, just as FDIC is as well, just a bunch of engaged people that are really into the job and really want to learn the best ways to do things. So that really sounds like some great stuff. OJ, let's talk a little bit about yourself and about your class at Fall Conference.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on today. This is unique. This is my first hump day being on with you guys, so look at it as a privilege. But also, this conference is my first conference ever teaching, so I'm really excited about that. But to get in a little bit about myself, my name is OJ. My last name is Kolodziej. A lot of people can't get it right, but everybody could get Gazmiak right. I don't understand that, but anyway. I'm a lieutenant with Birmingham Fire and Rescue. I've been here for 16 years. I'm an instructor with the Alabama Fire College also. So, you know, I'm a newcomer, I guess you could say, to this. So I'm a little bit nervous and excited at the same time. So what my class is about, it's called Caught in the Flow Path. And what we're going to look at is a couple of accidents that took place where command and control wasn't quite right for the first arriving officer. They didn't grab it and hold on to it like they should have. And things took place that injured some people. So we're going to take a deep look at what exactly happened with the first arriving officer, what happened inside the structure, how the flow path changed. And also we're going to go into a couple of things of how to control it. You know, we have the smoke blocking devices that are out there. A lot of people can't afford those, but there's still other techniques that you can use to help control the smoke, especially within apartment buildings. But the main portion of the class is to look at the first arriving officer and how to maintain command and control of the scene.
That's fantastic, and just like Dave's, I'm certainly looking forward to that as well. You bring up some really important points there, and as it relates to incidents, and I don't know specifically whether you're talking about incidents within Birmingham, for example, or other areas of your state, or just kind of national incidents. But I've always been a really big proponent of studying case studies, right? Studying previous incidents that happened, whether that be the NIOSH reports or whether that be the tremendous videos that Dan Madrikowski and NIST have put out over the years, as it, you know, whether it be you know, Cherry Road or Vandalia Avenue, or, you know, the list goes on and on and on and on about those videos. And I'm really big, especially at the company level, on using those types of things to kind of stoke that conversation, using those case studies, because I think that's a mental Rolodex in your head. And of course, that even goes back to a little bit of what Dave was talking about with maybe some decision-making models, naturalistic versus recognition prime decision-making and things like that. Having those slides in your slide tray, whether they came from your own experience or whether you garnered that knowledge from studying other things, I think is extremely important. And I'm actually teaching a classroom session as well. I guess I might as well talk a little bit about that while I've got the floor here. My class is called Company Officer Excellence, and don't take that the wrong way. It's to think that I'm crowning myself with the term excellence. It couldn't be further from the truth. I think that that's something that we all strive for, right? The company officer is absolutely the component that holds it all together. I just suddenly popped into my head. My buddy Jared Sergi's got a new class he's calling Fire Service Mortar. It's all about the company officer, and I think that's a great analogy. But the company officer is really what brings it all together. You can have really smart firefighters, you can have a really smart chief, and if you don't have somebody in the middle holding it all together, it's just simply not going to work out right, and things are going to be dysfunctional on the training ground, on the fire ground, and everywhere in between. So kind of the premise of my class, as far as the classroom sessions go at Fall Conference, is just going to take a look at things from the successes and failures to a certain degree that I've had in my own company. I'm a company officer on an engine company. downtown in our city, so we have a pretty dynamic first due district, everything from high rises to a university and interstate highways and all that kind of stuff, kind of a typical urban downtown first due. And we've had a lot of success with building a knowledge base and building company pride along the way with really learning our buildings. We love to get out and do pre-plans, walkthroughs, and things like that, quiz each other on what, where's the location of the FDC on this building, what kind of PRV does this building have, where are the split bank elevators downtown, just things like that, right? And building a knowledge base and some company pride with some pre-planning. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in my session and look at a few different ways of doing pre-planning. And then the other is company drills. I'm a huge proponent, and I've talked about ad nauseum on these webcasts, as Chief Pegram could certainly attest to, about company drills, right? And the importance of using that very first portion at the beginning of the shift while everybody's attention is focused on who's driving, who's riding on the nozzle position, who's when's the kindergarten tour coming today, and things like that. At that beginning moment of the shift, using that as a training opportunity and running through a quick, easy drill, whether it be whatever, tying some knots, setting up a foam adductor, something along those lines. And so we'll talk in the session a little bit about company drills as well. And the last thing, just kind of general attitude, setting the expectations and the bar high for your company. Everybody, certainly on this webcast and everybody listening at home, would understand exactly the concept I'm talking about if I say that when you pull up on the scene, when your engine pulls up on the scene and your crew is walking up the street at a dynamic incident, you want to be the company that chief looks over at you with a look of relief and says, hey, I need you guys. I got something for you. And not that company where that chief looks down the street and it's just like, oh, Lord, what am I going to do with these guys, right? And so setting the bar high in your company and doing whatever it takes to be that go-to company, being the company that you would want to respond to your house if it were on fire, or respond to your son or daughter if they were having a significant medical emergency or something like that. So just having that, trying to create that environment of excellence and trying to create that high bar in your firehouse at the company level. It's kind of one of the ways where that my classroom session is going to go. So, Chief Pegram, I'll kick it back to you for a little bit. You talked a little bit about the history of the fall conferences. What have you seen as far as the development of this over the past several years and the momentum of fall conference?
So the first fall conference, when we brought it back, we didn't have one for probably over a decade. And as we went out and talked to past members of the society and people that had, especially people that had been members of the society probably more than 20 years, 20, 25, 30 years, what they all talked about and what they all missed was the fall conference. They loved the fall conference. It was the right time of year. It was a smaller setting typically compared to like FDIC. Very unique in the content and instructor development focus, like we've talked about. And so that really got us as a board of directors talking about, shouldn't we be doing the fall conference again? And so we planned the first one, and it went well. We learned a few things, and we planned a second, and it did even better. And attendance was better, and sponsorship was better, and the feedback was better. So it's kind of gained momentum as we've started doing it, and I would say that it's probably going to be one of the top 5 things we do every year. With FDIC every year is where we have our annual meeting and our board of directors take office, and we do a lot of stuff surrounding FDIC as our home conference. But our own smaller conference, the fall conference, is kind of our own little niche market. And as we've talked about as a board of directors, we're the instructor society, and we need to focus on that. We're not the chief society. We're not the company officer society, although there's a lot of crossover with those ranks and training officers, instructors. We need to stay focused on our mission, which is building better instructors and better instruction. And so the fall conference allows us to focus on that. And it also allows us to identify people that we think are up-and-comers in the fire service that are doing good things. And OJ walked me right into a plug for the society, and I didn't even tell him to. But as he said, it's his first time teaching at a national conference, and today's his first Humpday Hangout. That's exactly why we exist, and that's exactly why the Instructor Society wants people to be a member. When people ask me, what do I get for my membership? Sure, there's discounts and there's things you can take advantage of, but the biggest thing is, whatever you give is what you get. And OJ, was one of those people that came on our radar screen a while back. We started seeing some of the stuff he was doing, things that he was posting on social media, and he piqued our interest. So we started checking into him, and the next thing you know, he's teaching at our fall conference. And I'll tell you, OJ, that there was somebody just like you a few years ago that piqued our interest, and we got that person involved, and now he's sitting here leading part of the conversation, and that's Brad French. So, that's the purpose of the society. That's the job of instructors, is to mentor not only the firefighters that you're training, but mentor other instructors. And I think that's the most important part about ISFSI, and I think it's probably the most important part about the fall conference. Focusing on those people, mentoring the next generation, so we have a legacy of excellent instructors that come out of ISFSI, the fall conference, FDIC, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chief Pegram, as I've told you many times in person, you've been a fantastic mentor to me as it relates to this organization, and I couldn't possibly agree more. People always ask me all the time as it relates to ISFSI, how do I get involved? How do I get started? And it just simply is a measure of, as the old saying goes, you get out of it what you put into it, right? Get involved, come to the conference, come to classes. We have committees that are always needing members that we need folks for. We do AFG and SAFER grant reviews. We do Congressional Fire Services Institute, all kinds of different opportunities for members to get involved. And it really is a way to get involved in the fire service on a deeper level. And it's been extremely rewarding for me. And so if anybody out there is listening to this with any of those kinds of aspirations or interests, certainly getting involved in ISFSI, and even more specifically, 3 weeks down the road in person with everybody on this webcast and many, many more from across the country down in Cincinnati. It's going to be great. One of the other things. Well, first of all, I guess we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'll do one more quick. I'll steal this from you real quick, Chief Pegram, and just to remind all the folks viewing. If you do have any questions, if you've got questions about the Instructor Society, if you've got questions about Fall Conference, and of course we're doing this kind of preview session for the Fall Conference, for ISFSI's Fall Conference, on the Penwell Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout, because Penwell is a great friend to the Instructor Society and has been one of the sponsors for the event. So we thank Bobby and Diane and Eric and everybody else in the Penwell Fire Engineering Group for that sponsorship and the opportunity to come on here and talk about it. But if you've got any questions as we move forward, #FETalk, and we'll pick those up and try to answer those as we go. Getting beyond OJ and Dave's classes in my session, just really briefly, I wanted to read down through. If you've not gone to the website to check this out, it's isfsi.org/Fall Instructor Conference 2016 with some dashes in there. It's probably easier to just go to the Education drop-down menu and then over to Conferences and check out Fall Instructor Development Conference. But if you read down through there, Chief Pegram's already pointed out a lot of the sequencing of the events throughout the week, the training officer credential program for the first couple of days, the hands-on training on Wednesday, the hands-on training on Thursday, and then the conference sessions on Friday and Saturday. Just real briefly, I'll read down through those. We've got Dave Casey on here talking about his teaching and learning leadership beyond the textbook. That sounds like it's going to be a fantastic class. We've also got Ken Follacy doing teaching, motivation, and attitude, the essentials of personnel and team development. Myself doing the company officer excellence class that I just talked about. William Greenwood doing extreme leadership. He's been a multi-year instructor at FDIC and has a great class about leadership that he's going to be doing. OJ's class, Caught in the Flow Path. We've also got Jim Moss out of West Metro, out in Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri area, that's going to be doing his very popular Fundamentals of Firefighter Fitness class that has been done at FDIC and all over the place. So we're going to have Jim Moss in town doing that class as well. John Murphy, who's a great friend to the ISFSI and a lawyer by trade, in addition to his involvement in the fire service, is going to be doing his very popular class, Preventing Legal Fires. Kind of talks about some of the litigation issues and responsibility issues from a legal setting as it relates to training in the fire service. Very, very important thing for fire instructors to understand. And then Mike Richardson, that's going to be doing improving firefighter safety with thermal imaging, really getting into some nitty-gritty stuff as it relates to thermal imaging cameras, not only the science behind it, but some fireground application stuff as well. And then, of course, last but not least, I would be remiss not to mention at least that we have a Friday night networking social. That's one of the things we've got a lot of great feedback in the past from our ISFSI conferences, as opposed to some of the larger conferences that are almost so big it's occasionally difficult to get a whole lot of handshaking or FaceTime with some of the instructors. We've got our Friday night networking social that's gotten very high reviews in the past. Folks that are attendees really enjoy getting to sit through classes during the day and then go out and enjoy an adult beverage or two with some of the instructors in the evening. So we're going to be doing that Friday night at 6 p.m. So I just kind of wanted to run down through real quick a little bit more about some of those sessions and a little bit about the some additional schedule events as well. So, Chief Pegram, anything to add before we soldier on here?
Well, I was just thinking we've got a host of different people on with us today that teach in different parts of the country. And before we went live, we were talking about that we're teaching some new stuff. And that's what we keep hearing in the fire services. Oh, they're teaching that new stuff. But as Dave Casey said before we came on, and we hear this time and time again, it's not so new. It's just stuff is getting regenerated or refreshed, if you will. And, we talk about the old days when the ISFSI would send out the instructograms by mail. Now everything is, virtual, internet, social media, that sort of stuff. But, it's in essence, a hump day hangout is similar to an instructogram. It provides information and ideas for training officers to develop programs and stuff like that. I'd like the panel, including you, Brad, maybe just talk a little bit about, as instructors, teaching new or not so new stuff. What are some of the challenges that you've seen and experienced as an instructor?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start out, I guess, and then we'll send it down the line. But one of the things that I think it's really important to do if you're teaching quote-unquote new material, and as you said, I think it's very important that we recognize as it relates to a lot of this stuff, certainly fire dynamics, although we have a lot of new data that UL and NIST have been pumping out over the past several years. When it comes to techniques, absolutely, I think it's important to recognize that some of these things have been done for years. My goodness, we've spent many a time talking about looking at things like Chicago using some exterior stream attack stuff for years. That was not controversial or anything like that. It was just what they did. It was a blitz and so on and so forth. Not just to use them as one example of many. So it is important to, I guess where I'm going with that is it's important to recognize the past and important to acknowledge the past in order for you to make any progress forward, right? If you have, as an instructor, if you have a group of students in the room, you're going to have everything from the youngest rookie to the oldest seasoned chief in the room, and it's important from an instructor standpoint to recognize that experience level in the room, to not discount anybody's experience, and I'm talking more specifically about modern fire dynamic stuff, but not discount anybody's experience in the past. Those fires that they went to, they really went to. Those things that they experienced on those fires, they really experienced. And so it's important to build that bridge between recognizing previous experience and also opening the door a little bit to some new stuff and trying to encourage some of those folks to be open to these new things, and while at the same time kind of building up a little bit of rapport with some of your maybe senior students in the room by recognizing their experience and kind of transitioning it to talking about modern day things, to talking about what we're there to talk about. And in a lot of cases, as it relates to fire dynamics, that's modern stuff. That's flow path. That's VEIS. That's heat release rate, heat of combustion, heat flux, all that kind of stuff that maybe they didn't have that terminology back in their day when they were going through their initial textbooks, but is now very valid and is absolutely the vernacular of the fire service. And so building that bridge between the varying levels of experience, I think, is probably one of the more difficult challenges as a new instructor, period, and also as an instructor teaching new stuff. So let's go on down the line. Dave, what do you think?
Well, at the risk of agreeing with you, that finding that common bridge is so important, and we've been really pushing the modern fire behavior for about 18 months, and we've had classes out there, and we had ISFSI come in and give the full program and train the trainers, And what I found that seems to be working well is, yep, we bring up the Chicago long pipes on their deck guns and pictures from the 80s and even a little bit further back where they did that, and we bring up the FDNY can man, slow control, get in, keep the door closed to the unit that's on fire. So we like to, or at least I'd like to hit them with some of the bigger cities that seem to have the credibility, and then I take them back to where I was fire chief, which was near Jacksonville, Florida. We went to pre-connected small ground monitors, 3-inch pre-connect with a ground monitor, and the troops would do an exterior knockdown. When they were showing up with some fairly minimal crews, they could get a good knockdown, and really, other than as much as the door control has become more apparent now, pretty much the same thing we're teaching now, except it was 20 years ago. And I think that bridge of big city and more rural area or suburban area seems to get some resonance amongst the people attending the training, because a lot of them they like it if it's from a big city. I guess because of the frequency of the calls, there's a lot of credibility in that. But then when you can bring it back to a similar environment that they're used to, maybe a more suburban environment, that really seems to have done well. I think where we're having more trouble, because before we came on, I said that the modern fire behavior is actually going quite well. Most of the departments are really buying into it in our areas. What I'm seeing trying to paint a new picture that is not going as well is with the cancer, is with the cleaning the PPE and getting it off you when you come out of a building. We put a safety brief out every month. That seems to be probably one of our bigger topics, is the hoods, not leaving them underneath your chin, and getting the gear off and doing some decon. And that seems to be the biggest heresy that we're running into, where that's just not being as well accepted, even though we've had the Cancer Support Network come in and we've been pushing their materials out pretty heavily. That's where I seem to see the most resistance, I think. And
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's universal.
And those topics, when you talk modern fire dynamics and you talk the cancer stuff, I mean, arguably those are the two big things getting talked about all over the internet and social media and in the periodicals, trade magazines and whatnot all the time. You really, as instructors, we're in a good position to tie those two topics together, and that makes a whole lot of sense, right? When we talk about the heat release rates and the volatility of smoke and all that kind of stuff, that's an easy transition into carcinogens and the importance of all that stuff. So I think to a certain degree as instructors we have that responsibility as it relates to, if you talk about one, in a sense it kind of leads to talking about the other, and yeah, that's both are significant cultural challenges. There's no doubt about that. And as instructors, we have to be the ones to kind of try to piece that together and figure it out. So, OJ, what do you think as it relates to teaching some of the more modern, quote-unquote, material? What have been some successes or failures that you've had with that, and what are some of your challenges with that topic specifically, or just in general?
What I've encountered here is trying to keep the romance of the job in line with the modern type styles that we're encountering, because you have the young guys coming in and they saw ladder 49, they saw backdraft, and that's what they're thinking is going to take place. We don't have the 20-30 minutes anymore to get inside the structures to do like the old smoke eaters used to do. Now we're encountering what, maybe 3-4 minutes, and then we encounter flashover. That's about the same time we're rolling up on scene. So trying to get the romance with the realism, that's the hardest part that I've encountered teaching this, because a lot of guys don't want to let go of that tradition going through the front door, which we shouldn't. That is what we grew up on, but the materials that we're dealing with now is not the same materials that they dealt with 20 years ago. And that, like I said, it's just hard to get the romance with the realism in line. That's the hardest part.
Chief Pegram, what do you think? You asked. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Dave brings up a great point, and you would be remiss if you didn't realize that cancer in the fire service is one of those hot topics, new topics that we're talking about. I don't think we really were talking about cancer 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, let alone maybe even 5 years ago. I mean, there was a little bit, but when I first asked the question, I was thinking more about fire dynamics and those sort of things. But I think Dave brings up a great point that we as instructors need to help do something about the cancer problem in firefighters. We're all seeing the statistics, and I won't try to quote them because I don't know them as well as I should, but it's a significant problem. I've been told that if cancer presumption was all across the country, we would have skyrocketing numbers of line of duty deaths related to cancer if we counted all those cancer related deaths as line of duty deaths. It's a significant problem, but we know what to do to prevent it. And that's where it becomes an issue for an instructor, for company officers, as you talk about a lot in your classes, Brad. We have an obligation to teach people about cancer and firefighter cancer and how to avoid it. And it starts with the instructor teaching that in recruit school, teaching that on the drill ground when you're doing live fire training. Are we taking the actions that we could do to protect our members and protect ourselves? So not only do we have a duty to act in teaching our firefighters about cancer, and not only teaching about it, but in our behaviors on the drill ground, but more importantly, how are we protecting instructors? Because that student may be exposed to a carcinogen on the fire ground or in a drill for 5 or 10 minutes, but the instructor is doing rep after rep after rep. And if you've ever gone to see a burn center or burn building where there's some instructors that have been there for a while, often they have some pretty salty gear. The gear's dirty, the helmets are dirty, the face shields are melted, and that's because they're in there, they're doing a lot of live fire training or whatever type of training they're doing. But we got to remember that is increasing exponentially their exposure to potential cancers. And I think we as a instructor society, but also individually, we as instructors really need to address the cancer issue. All the National Fire Service organizations have some type of focus on it right now, and there's grant money from all over the place going towards firefighter cancer research and prevention and education programs. And if it's not something you're talking about, if it's not something you're addressing at the beginning and the end of every hands-on live fire event, then you're doing a disservice to yourself and your students. So I'll just throw that out there and drop the mic.
It's interesting sitting here and listening to everybody talk about this topic, and not only about cancer but about fire dynamics. An interesting parallel was kind of creeping into my head, and it makes the cancer thing even more frustrating, because a lot of the pushback that we get teaching around the country or talking with folks or sparring on social media from time to time and things like that as it relates to some of these topics about modern fire behavior is that the data is there, but people don't always trust it for whatever reason, as silly as that may be. People don't always trust that data, and they're more, you show me first, show me on the fire ground. But with the cancer, it's the same concept. Here's the data, right? On the fire dynamics side, you've got Steve and Dan and the folks like that are producing this material and the data from the labs. And on the cancer side, you have equally qualified folks in the medical and scientific communities producing that cancer stuff. And nobody really doubts that information. The cancer rates and the tying of firefighters to cancer and things like that, nobody really doubts that. But yet, even though they don't doubt that data, the cultural challenge is still there. That, just like OJ said, the challenge of the romance is still there. Chief Pegram, to pick on you, some of the pictures and helmets are right behind you right now in that screenshot, illustrating the romance of the old firefighter and the salty helmets and things like that. And I absolutely get it, right? That's one of the things that draws us all to this job. But even though we know the information is right there in front of us, and we believe it, as specifically as it relates to the cancer stuff, almost universal acceptance of the knowledge, we still kind of have a tendency to drag our feet and have to swim against that cultural, swim up the cultural stream, if you will. It's sometimes a tough battle. So anyway, one of the other things I want to talk about, we got about 15 minutes left here. One of the things that we talked about in the discussion before we came on live was also to touch a little bit more on hands-on. I already kind of went off on a tangent about the hands-on training at the ISFSI Fall Conference, which, in case we haven't mentioned, is in about 3 weeks in Cincinnati, Ohio. And you can go to isfsi.org and drop down from the education menu and go to ISFSI Fall Conference to check out the schedule and get registered. But I have a feeling. We already mentioned that a few times. But anyways, but all joking aside, we are going to have some great hands-on training down there. And I wanted to ask Dave and OJ what kind of successes they've had, not just in the classroom, but taking some of the modern fire dynamics principles and taking them to the drill ground, whether that be through dollhouse burns, whether that be through doing some air entrainment demonstrations with streamers and windows for different hose streams, or you know, different VEIS methods, and practicing how to do that under different conditions. So we'll go down. I'll kick it to both of those guys. I kind of already talked about how we're going to be doing some of those things down in Cincinnati for the conference in a few weeks, but both in your neck of the woods, OJ, and then down in Louisiana for Dave. How are you guys doing some hands-on as it relates to modern fire behavior? OJ, go for it.
Here in Alabama, we found success with the dollhouse, and you know, I'm very appreciative to Chief Norwood to giving us the plans to build those dollhouses, because it has changed the way that we look at fire dynamics and airflow, and the way air entrainment and all that has taken shape nowadays. So we've really accepted and adopted the dollhouse here, and we have. To date, we've gotten that message across greatly. So we are very appreciative for the dollhouses. We're also really stressing the VEIS. You know, I get messages all the time. Why do you add the I? It's already in there. Well, yes, the I is silent, but what we are encountering are a different breed of generation coming in. We got the millennials coming in who ask why all the time. So if we can address that up front, why we isolate, to let them know we don't have a hose line, that door being closed is our safety net, then when we go into the hands-on, there's no questions. They automatically know why they're doing it, and then they do it, and then we continue with our hands-on training. Also, when you speak about UL, you know, this past spring, they invited people to come up to witness the burns. And, you know, fortunate for me, I was able to go witness them, and they were completely transparent with everything that they had. And the great thing about that was afterwards, they stuck around to answer questions. So that to me was huge for all the UL guys to stick around, answer all the questions that we had, and to be very transparent with it. So a couple of things I took from up there, I brought back home, kind of like some of the flow patterns that they were doing with like the hit and move and the flow and move and stuff like that. I brought it back home, and we played with it here to learn about it, because our thing was we'd move up to the seat of the fire and then knock it down. But seeing, you know, with the different flow patterns with the hit and move and flow and move, we're starting to see a difference in actually advancing into the fire.
You know, I couldn't possibly agree with the statement you just made anymore, OJ. And I had the opportunity to go up. I did not make it up there to Northbrook for the stream study, but I did go up the previous time for the PPV studies last year, whatever that would have been, maybe 2014. And I couldn't get it out of my head how much Steve and the folks at UL were an open book, exactly as you just said. There is no conspiracy. There's no you know, backroom deals going on, you know, some of the crazy things that you read around about on the internet. It's just simply not the case. It's just scientific study, and it's data generation, and it's learning more. And I've said time and time again in classes, and of course probably on these Humpday Hangouts as well, you know, we can discuss tactical application. We can discuss interior-exterior water. We can discuss why to have an I in VEIS and silly little you know, word things like that. But the science is the science, right? And that's one of the coolest things about this entire process in the American Fire Service, is that although we can squabble about tactical application, that foundational knowledge base, this renaissance of knowledge that the fire service has gone through in the past several years and will continue to go through for several years, is elevating that base level of knowledge about fire dynamics so much in the American Fire Service that it's just a really neat thing to be a part of. And I guess I go off on that tangent because, as you said, UL has been an absolutely open book about it. There is no closed door meetings. There's no, you know, whispers back and forth and stuff. It's you want to see the stuff, come up here, see it, look at the monitors, look at the meters. So I think that's an important point. Dave, we'll kick it on to you. I know you wanted to give a shout out based on some of the unfortunate and unique events that have been going on down in your area, and then I'd also like to hear your thoughts on what Louisiana's doing for hands-on application of some of this information.
Well, real good, real quick.
Dave, I'm going to stop you. You just muted.
All right, now I'm back. More better. All righty. Just real quick, I wanted to bring up that we took 27 inches of water on our campus, and it flooded several of our buildings, as you would imagine. And I want to give a quick shout out. Reggie Bell, who's Mississippi State Training Director, was one of the first people on the phone to us. Offered to bring us supplies, anything we needed for both, not just the facility, but for our instructors. And I wanted to recognize him for that. And Dave Wall from Georgia and Alan Rice from Alabama called and offered up whatever we needed as far as help for keeping the programs going and lights on, and is very much appreciated. So again, thanks to them. We are in business. We are running. We're trying a lot of things out. Main classroom had 6 inches of water in it, so it's not back in service, but we have our recruit school running second day, and we'll dry out. It's a tad humid around here right now. As far as what we're doing, the dollhouse is something we're working on right now. One of our instructors, Gray Young, got the plans from PJ, and we have an annual company officer leadership conference that's starting to get kind of big. And we've asked PJ to come in this time, next May, to talk about not just as not at the company level as much as how do we teach it. And actually, I'm going to be harassing OJ here directly about that very topic. But what we've done, and we're having good luck with it, is we have several mobile props for the areas that don't have burn buildings that they have good access to. And what we've done with those is take them out. We'll get a good fire going in there, a couple pallets, half a bale of hay, maybe more. And so they have a well-enveloped room on fire, realizing, of course, it's a training room. And we'll have crews go in with thermal imagers. We have, for training, we have the thermal imagers that will transmit TV, so the folks outside can watch the screens, watch the temperatures, and we'll do the quick knockdown from outside. And invariably, the biggest comment we get from everybody is that the crew inside is not getting steamed, that we average about a 400-degree temperature drop within a couple seconds, normally with about 25 gallons of water, and that changes, you know, a little bit by how we're doing it, what the conditions are. And that just seems to make a huge impression on the people attending the classes, that it's such a small flow of water that the interior situation did not go to hell in a handbasket. They didn't lose their visibility, and the smoke didn't bank down to the ground. And that seems to have been the biggest comments. And we've done this coming up on, actually it's coming up on 2 years now. It'll be December. The first class we did was December during our winter fire school. We did that in one of our regular burn buildings. And I wish I could have videoed the comments made, because they were really enlightening. I've just never expected to see the situation not go to just all steam inside. They liked the fact that they could do a quick knockdown, and realistically, I realize I'm bordering, as been in the fire service long enough that I may have dragged myself out of the tar pits of the mid-'70s. But way back when we went through Fort Lauderdale's fire training, that's what we were taught. We would knock it down from the outside while the crews unzip the air packs from the side of the truck and put them on. But it's pretty much the same premise. Knock it down while people made entry, and they would take it in, finish it off from the inside. So it's kind of, the more we change, the more we're really not changing. Sure,
that's interesting to hear what some of your students had to say on the from an inside perspective. And certainly, as everybody's well aware that's tuning into these things, everybody's certainly waiting to hear some of the results. Chief Pegram's on the UL technical panel for the fire stream study, and that's going to be an extremely important thing when it comes out. And the entire fire service will need to read and digest that information and incorporate it, just as every other piece of information has come out over the past several years. It's not going to be anything that's going to shift any pendulum from one side to the other or anything like that. It's going to be data. It's going to be information. It's going to be great stuff to incorporate into your operation as your organization sees appropriate. So we're certainly looking forward to that. But it's interesting to hear some perspective from students inside, Dave. Chief, we'll kick it back to you. Any thoughts on the hands-on training stuff, and what do you want to do to wrap us up here?
Well, I'll comment. You mentioned the UL fire tax study and some of the other comments earlier about the work that UL's doing, and I'll just share a personal experience. As a member of that technical panel, I got invited up and to observe the burns, and what I think really shows the dedication of the UL Fire Research Group is several of us that were there, myself, Ray McCormick, Danny Doyle, Nick Martin, Dennis Laguerre, we were all there observing the burns, and a lot of us wanted, we were part of designing what burns they were going to do. So we had input on how the buildings were built, the floor plan, the hallways, the doors, the windows. UL built it per our specs, and as well as the scenarios we wanted to see, transitional attack, interior attack, external attack, flowing while advancing the line, not flowing while advancing the line. And they did all those things. But while we were there, 30, 40 days into their burns, we had more questions. And they shared those questions with Steve and the crew at the end of one of the burn days. And they completely rewrote the next day and did something completely different that was never planned, wasn't on the table, wasn't on the charts, because they wanted to answer the question specifically to the tech panel members, the people that are going to be involved in validating this data. They wanted to make sure they gave them the answer to their why question. And we talk about the younger generation wanting to, why, just telling us because isn't good enough anymore. Here's a tech panel of people with 20, 25, 30 years of experience, some of the best instructors that are out there teaching a lot of hands-on tactics and stuff. And they had why questions. And I think it's a testament to Steve and Robin and everybody at UL that they were able to essentially erase the next day, reset, and answer those questions for us. So I'm excited for the results that are going to come out of that, but I wanted to share that personal story that people that completely dismay what the UL is doing really don't have an understanding of how committed they are to answering the why question for the fire service. That is their role. That's why they're there.
You reset the next day, no pun intended, right?
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking. They have a complete construction crew on site building and rebuilding while you're burning. So it's well worth it. If you ever get the opportunity, I would recommend any firefighter, instructor, company officer go up and check it out. Like you mentioned, Brad, we're at the top of the hour. We've got about 2 minutes left. So any parting words from OJ or Dave before we go?
I appreciate you guys having me on. I look forward to the fall conference in a few weeks. And again, thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate you being on, and we're looking forward to your program, and we'll see you in Cincinnati.
Yes, sir.
Dave?
Same thing. Looking forward to seeing the presentations and getting to see everybody up there.
Absolutely, and we appreciate everything you've done for the Society in the past and worked on several projects with us, and we're excited to see you in your new role. Alabama's and the Southeast have been a great supporter of ISFSI and a lot of projects, and we know that you being down there will be a great partnership for the Society. Brad, why don't you take us out at the top of the hour?
All right, I appreciate it, Chief, and just like everybody else says, I can't wait for fall conference. I'll see everybody, hopefully, if you're tuning in and have the ability to get down there 3 weeks from now. It's going to be some top-notch stuff. It's a great way to get your foot in the door with some involvement and some higher-level stuff. I'm certainly a testament to that, and OJ's having a great opportunity to start getting involved in some of that stuff as well. So it's a great thing. ISFSI is a fantastic organization, and we're going to have a great time down there 3 weeks from now. So thanks again to Bobby and Penwell Fire Engineering for having us on for the Hangout and for being a sponsor for the ISFSI Fall Conference as well. And we'll see you in 3 weeks in Cincinnati.